Hello and welcome back after this very brief break. And see Annie's smiling face. So I would like to introduce and welcome Annie Spencer. Many of you will know her, one of our UK elders, as she's a ceremonialist, a shamanic teacher, rites of passage and wilderness facilitator, a storyteller, and of course, a great wisdom teacher and keeper. And we are really chuffed to have you back with us. Annie did our opening ceremony last year, and this year we invited her as a speaker. There you see how loved you are by Sacred Earth Activism.
Well, that is so kind of you, and it's so cool to invite me back.
Okay, let me say a few more things. Shall I say a few more things about you, or do you want to introduce yourself?
No, you go ahead. I don't want to.
I go ahead. Okay, I'll sing your praise a bit longer. So this is Annie Spencer. She has been running groups and offering training for over 40 years. And she has a background in psychology, but this background together with her incredible knowing and knowledge about earth-based spiritual traditions means that she's very skilled in really traversing both worlds and moving between the worlds. And I've experienced that myself. I've trained with Annie about 20 years ago for a while, and she is incredible. So she was introduced to the spiritual ways of the first people of North America in the early 80s, and then has apprenticed in the North American tradition, but she also studied quite intensively in the Mayan traditions in Guatemala for over 15 years. But she's also very versed in the traditions of the spiritual traditions of these British Isles. And she brings these ancient ways together with the most North American ways and creates a fantastic mixture, which you kind of need to experience to really appreciate it. What is there to say? As a teacher, Annie says that she opens pathways for others so that they can illuminate their own life journey, and her primary interest is really the renewal of ancient ceremonial forms to create a path of beauty upon Grandmother Earth. So that's all I want to say. And today, Annie will speak in conversation with me about working with sacred stone circles, fogous and quoits. And that's me done. And if you want to add anything, please do now or forever hold your peace.
No, you've done brilliantly. The only thing I'll say is I didn't study in Guatemala. I studied their teachings. I've actually finally went to Guatemala a few months ago for the first time.
Right.
That was a full experience, having been working with their teaching for so long, and to see where they came from, and go back and give a bit of gratitude I've received.
Wonderful. So, right, as we're talking about working with stone circles, I wanted to ask the first questions I wanted to ask you is really, how did that connection, that deep connection you have, as I said, I have experienced that when being with you, how did that deep connection to the stone circles and sacred sites actually start?
I think I was very fortunate in that I'm a bit of a mongrel, but my mother's family, my mother's father really comes from the very southwest of Cornwall. And my mother was born and grew up on a farm down there. So I spent as much time there as I could. And my grandparents were very, very connected into the land in quite a strong way. They wouldn't talk about it. As a child, you learnt it just by picking it up. So when they cut the corn, they'd put it up in stooks to dry. And when you looked at a field of it from a distance, they were all following the movement of the land without anyone sort of going and measuring it. They just did it. And my my grandfather was particularly in tune with animals. So much so that even when he was old and walking with a stick, he must have been older than me. I don't walk with a stick yet. Occasionally, if I remember a bull getting out, bulls are pretty wild and they're very powerful. They're very strong. And my grandfather was sent, of course, to bring him back because they knew that he could quieten him down. And sure enough, he comes back and the bull is just walking behind him like a little lamb. And he had that ability, to be with the animals. So somewhere from very young, I learned about connecting with the land and the other beings. And then also the other good fortune is that Cornwall is a place of granite. There are the land changes and it partly changes because of the sediment of the rock. And up here in Bath, where I live now, the rock is limestone. When I first came, oh, I didn't like that at all because it's full of fossils they held by me but I didn't know that. But granite is alive to me. It's full of crystal, it's full of feldspar. It came out of the depth of the earth. It wasn't made on the surface. And so I loved those rocks from the beginning. So then the next step was we have stone circles, we have like that part of Cornwall is very unchanged. When I came up here again, I went immediately to a stone circle to Stanton Drew, but it felt covered with blood, and its lines had been broken because the church, of course, had built itself right on one of the energy lines. But in Cornwall, the circles are comparatively small, so no one pays much attention to them unless they want to. So they've been left alone. And how I started working with them, since I didn't have the faintest idea, I just visited them a lot at different times of the day. Sometimes we slept in them. I would put my hands on them and go around. Sometimes I'd sit on one. And we started doing little ceremonies, and it was just getting to know the stones by constantly going and meeting them. That's what I would say was my way in. And the same with the quoits, which you might call cromlechs. They have 3 upright stones and a roof, and some of them are quite tall. And then there's tomb quoit, which is like a little toadstool, and you have to creep into it, and you go into them, and you just sit with them, or you'd sit with there's multiple quoit, which is the capstone is actually tipped up now. You just sit against it or stand against it. So my thing is always you just begin with who you are, and you go and meet the rocks where they are. You just go again and again and again and again with patience. And then you notice who comes by, what birds fly by, what little animal might come out when you're there. If the wind changes, if the sun comes in and out, if the moon is there, if the stars are looking down on you, if it starts to rain. All these things just being simple. The first thing is to be simple. They always, I learned medicine world teachings, and it starts with the 4 directions which relate to the north, south, east, and west. And you learn, first of all, to relate to the plants, the animals, the sun, the earth. And then there's a second gateway, which of course is esoteric. And of course, we all want to run to the esoteric, don't we, and have some glamorous, magical time. But they always said, and it took me a long time, that to really understand, well, I probably will never really understand it, because each step you go, you think, God, I knew nothing. How could I think to be teaching when I knew nothing? And then 10 years later, you think, I know nothing, even less than nothing. How can I possibly tell anyone anything? But anyway, the gateway to the esoteric is through the material natural world. So the gateway to understanding, to having a relationship with rocks, is through just going and meeting them. I did my first spending my night out in the Merry Maiden Stone Circle. I chose it, my goodness me, because I knew nothing. And then I walked up and thought, I must, there are 2 guardians. I thought I must go and, give an offering to the guardians if I'm going to sit in their circle. So I did. The grass was knee high. It was wet with dew. I was wearing jeans. So by the time I got to my night out, I already had legs wet to my thighs. And then I'd made this wonderful, they asked me, so which way do you want to face? Which is your direction of power? So I said the west, forgetting that all the bad weather comes in from the west. So a gale came in and the rain came in. And I was sitting there in one black plastic dustbin bag. But it went. And on that night, one of those rocks completely opened up to me. I could see all the energetics way inside it. And that's what will happen if you go and talk to them. And I always think that the stone circles are a good place to go and talk to rocks, because there are rocks everywhere, aren't there, on any hillside? But some of them may not be, they may not like humans at all. And some of them may not be used to talking to humans, you know, they've been doing whatever they've been doing. But the rocks that have been put in a circle thousands of years ago by our ancestors are used to communicating with us. They're used to that because they've been doing that for thousands of years. So that's a very simple reason to go to them, because it may be easier to hear what they say, and maybe they found a way to communicate with us, because after all, it's not just us trying to find out what a rock is about. It's a rock, probably more importantly, trying to find out how to tell these ridiculous humans, these crazed humans, how to live a better life. Anyway, there's my response to your question. Yes, maybe a bit long.
It's a great response. I remember well we spoke about it before when I met you the first time and did the first group with you, which was a long time ago. You instructed us to walk up to the stone circle and greet the guardians and to listen to them, and also to ask whether we are actually allowed into the circle. And for me, the answer was yes. And so I was standing there leaning at these guardians. They were on both sides, one of those. And I got a very strong message. And then I thought, oh, nonsense, you know, forget. And at the end of that, I think it was a long weekend workshop, the message came absolutely through. It was so crystal clear. And it's really interesting what you just said about how these messages actually come. When you said with your, you know, the storms came in and my strong places in the West, and then you get the weather and you get everything. And it's fantastic how these messages come. So how do they communicate with us? That's what I'm trying to ask. In your experience, because some people, we go there and we try to hear a clear sentence, you know, we are very mind orientated, aren't we? So there must be so many ways of how they communicate with us. Talk a bit
It
about
depends what sort of a, it probably depends what sort of a person you are. You know, some people are very open. So they'll go there and they'll get a whole stream of messages, which of course I won't, because I'm just a bit, I don't anyway. Some people hear messages. Some people have visions. And then there are the ones that are forgotten about. We have a very visual language. So we imagine that we should be seeing great visions. But that's just our language, really. For some people, they will feel the energy vibrations change. Some people pick up a lot through their body. I pick up a lot through my body. And then I have to translate it, really. Because I have a feeling, and quite often I don't even translate it. I respond, and maybe I respond later on. And people say, why are you doing that? And I will consciously say, I don't know. It's like something has come through my body and then I respond to it. But some people, it will be all about what's going on while they're there. So that it won't be so much that they're picking up something from the stone itself, but they will be picking up, as I was saying, from the weather and whoever's coming and going. And that might include humans, you know. Let's not leave us out of this beautiful collection here. So there's no hard and fast way.
Good.
Some people putting your hands on them and going around and putting your hands on them, you can really sensitize yourself to them. And the different rocks are very different. You know, they have very different energies and they're giving out And generally you'll find one maybe that you feel you have a good connection with.
Yeah.
Every time that you go to that one, you know. It's but I would more and more as I get older, people come and say, I want all these techniques. And I think, oh, well, I used to teach techniques, but now I say, be simple, because you are part of this earth. The rock is part of this earth. Somewhere we're relations. And if we could remember that, we wouldn't have to learn so many techniques to remember. And the more of us who remember it, the more it goes into the collective, and the easier it is for us to make those connections. So it's like when I started off in the early 80s, some people knew a lot, a few, and usually they were in quite hidden societies. So it was quite hard to find them, like the Golden Dawn and the Western Mystery people. And it was fortunate being in Bath, because quite a lot of them come through Bath, because Bath's a very powerful and sacred place. But really, we had to learn from the very beginning, and we had to be very careful, and we did everything. I mean, we did everything the Native American way exactly. You had to have your drum exactly right. You had to have exactly this and exactly that. And you had to say your prayers in exactly this way and exactly that way. And then as it got into our collective, it gets a little looser. Still need to learn, we think, a particular path, so that you have some idea of where these paths will take you. But it's like enough of us have been working now that the land is beginning to respond. But then you have to be careful, because sometimes the response isn't happy. It needn't be friendly. Can be quite jolting, because the land has been neglected by us and ill-treated by us for a long time. Our ancestors don't give much good teaching really back maybe 1,000 years. Because they've been disconnected or more. So we have to be careful that way as well.
Yeah.
So it's walking gently with gratitude and love, and maybe with
respect,
sorrow, but also sorrow. I'm sorry that I and my ancestors forgot you. It's like the colonization went everywhere, didn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't just to other people.
Oh, no, it was the land as well. Of course, the waters, the land, everywhere, yeah.
Yes, and it's still happening. You've got someone coming on later, haven't you, to talk about the River Wye, and
yeah,
and it's hard everywhere. It doesn't matter if you live by a stone circle. It doesn't really matter if you live in a town. There's a few trees in the town. There's a few bits of grass where people aren't putting plastic grass or gravel down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, but it's like going and saying, hello, I remember you. And I see a question has come up.
We're going to put questions to you later if you want to stay in the flow. Otherwise, if you want to answer it now.
And I just saw one that said, do I ever feel moved to make a stone circle myself? When I'm putting down a little wheel for myself, I may put down small stones, but I don't think I'd ever build a circle, because magical work, spiritual work, takes a long time, and it is many layered. And the danger of making your own stone circle and then people coming to it and thinking that is a sacred circle is it won't have built up. It's very unlikely. What do I know? You may be an amazing magician. Those layers, and then people don't understand how deep they have to go really for something to happen. I was talking to a woman from northern America just a little while ago. In Guatemala. I had such a good time. And I said, so why do you, and there was a whole to do, because there was a German man there who was not in good alignment and was claiming knowledge that he didn't really have, and it was all quite difficult. And I said, you know, you do want us to follow your teachings exactly. She said, because they're very deep, and if you don't do them properly, the depth of what can happen won't happen, and in time then the whole thing gets lost. There is a longhouse, I've been told, in Canada, and they fill it, a longhouse, quite a big building, and they fill it with eagle down, and in that place people learn to fly. Now, I'm never going to learn to fly. Probably you're never going to learn to fly. And I'm saying it not because any of us should learn to fly, but to understand that the depth of the magic is really way beyond what we might think about. So we mustn't forget that. We need to remember that most of us are really beginners. And we don't need to run too fast into a form that maybe we don't really understand. And it's really important to make each step of the way something that's real for myself. I don't follow a form that someone else has given me. Maybe I do a little bit to try it out, but I use that to come back. So if I'm going to work with the stone circle, I have to make a relationship with the rocks. And that may take me all my lifetime. And maybe I bring some other people there, and maybe in 3 generations' time, they will really work with them again because we will have remembered enough.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. Exactly. Yeah. When you remember, because maybe that can lead us to, we talked about it before, saying, okay, in some places, as you just said, the traditions were kept up, the ceremonial work was kept up, the land was like in certain places in South America, especially in places where the conquerors didn't get to. There you have an unbroken kind of energy field in a way, and a build-up, and as you rightly say, what can happen there is unbelievable, because that which we can't quite name and understand is so strong, this energy. But then we talked about it before, about these circles in Cornwall, because you said to a certain degree, as you said right now as well, they weren't that influenced and desecrated because not so many people went there. But we know very little about their heritage, don't we? We know very little about what happened there. I know you tell a few stories about, or stories which are there. So maybe you can talk a bit about that. Or what is actually, yeah, in a way, what has been happened? What do we know? Do we know anything about these circles? And how do we, and how do we, in a way, find out a bit more besides of the personal connection and personally being there and going there again and again? And trying to learn.
I went to Boscanoon with someone called George Trevelyan. He was one of the, what was he, one of the founders of the New Age movement or something before it. And a group went, and there was a sensitive there. And this is what he experienced. And I may have said this before as well. I don't know. He experienced that sometimes people would come from all around, and there'd be, there'd be sort of a lot of people. Maybe they come from far away. Like I always think that I sort of believe now that Stonehenge was a communal place that was used or visited or worked with by people from all over Europe. And I suspect that's why it is the one circle that everyone comes to from all over the world, because it has always been that. It's been a magnet and it was used in that way. It was very important for people all over Europe, and I don't know how far away. But anyway, within a smaller degree, everyone came to this Boscanoon stone circle. And there were some, what should we call them, priests or magical people, whatever, in the center, working the energy. And they also were using the energy of all the people who came and stood around. And they worked it and they raised it and they raised it until they had it was like a rainbow dome over the whole circle energetically, and it got stronger and stronger and stronger as everybody prayed and everybody sang, and maybe they danced and they made music. And then finally they came with these very big, this is how I saw it when he was describing it, these big horns. And they blew, about four of them blew these big horns. And when they blew them, that rainbow dome opened, sort of broke, if you like, and when it fragmented and was sent right out all round and about. So that's what they were using them for, to raise good energy and send it out to the land and the people and the ocean as well, because it's never far away there.
Yeah.
So that's the best one that I know. I know a little bit about how our relationship with the rocks ended, but those are giant stories, because as well as the circles, you have the big piles of rocks on the hills and the big piles of rocks on the coast. And there's a lot of sort of folk tales now about the giants, and that's a giant's chair, and this is a giant's this, and this is where but they've been, the corner stories are not in a good state. They've been badly Christianized. So generally you're told the giants are really stupid and bad tempered. But there's one story about giant Hollyban who lived above my family's farm, moved between there and Morville, which is about 6 miles away. That was sort of his territory. And he was one of the last ones. And he was really friendly with a little boy. And the little boy used to go up and they used to play games together. And he loved it because otherwise he was on his own. And then one day when the little boy said, well, I better go home. My mum will want me for my tea and she'll be cross if I'm late. And he said, fine, fine, goodbye. And the giant forgot himself and patted the little boy on the head. And he was so strong and his pat was so strong, it broke the boy's skull and killed him instantly. And the giant was so sad. He sat there just cradling the boy in his arms until he too died of grief. So it was like, and there are other stories. There's a story about you used to have to go a very long way round from Penzance to St. Ives, and there was a path over the top, but no one dared go because there was still a giant living there. So what I'm saying is the rocks were still alive, and people were very powerful, and people were just no longer in communication with them. They were frightened of them now. This young man thought, well, I'm going to go up. And he went up and he found the giant. And again, they made friends. But at some point, they had to have a fight. And the young man didn't want to fight because the giant was very old. And he didn't want to hurt him. But somewhere they had to have it. And he killed him. So it was like somewhere the coming of the humans, time changes things, doesn't it? Nothing stays the same. So that time when the giants were and the rocks were able, it was their time. They could live and they could do things in the way that they wanted to. And these funny little humans came along and things changed and the rocks have quietened and stepped back. I remember, they always say about the dead, and I had a friend who died quite young. She said, I don't mind dying, she said, but I do want you to remember me. I want you to tell stories about me. I don't want to be forgotten. Her name was Sue. And it's the same than they say with the spirits of the land. If we don't remember them, if we don't go out and look for them, if we don't tell their stories, they disappear from our reality. So you could say it may be going on a different level of reality. And what we need to do is to start paying attention so that we can slip into that reality, or we can open up to it so it's included in our reality. So then what the rocks need and what the rocks can tell us, because they have a memory from when the earth began, and they have watched so much, they have a lot of wisdom. If we could just open up we can open up to that reality where they still are alive and but they move at such a slow speed compared to ours that it's difficult for us to imagine that they would move at all.
But they
Trees,
do move.
but
But
they,
move they do. Of course,
but
they're
they-
alive.
yes. So if you go to stone circles, you remember all that and you think these stones maybe are willing still, even, and experience in talking to us. So even though we don't remember the way that our ancestors talked with them, maybe that doesn't matter, that we don't consciously know. Maybe what's more important is building a desire in ourselves and going, yes, as you say, with respect and humility, and also gratitude, that they allow themselves to be taken from wherever they were living and cut out of their families and brought to make these circles. And then we don't know, with Stonehenge, they were brought quite a long way from their home.
Yeah, no, from Wales.
Allowed that to happen, and they agreed to somewhere. There must have been some contract between us and those rocks and those circles at the beginning, I suspect. But I don't know. See, we don't know.
I would suspect as well.
Yes.
They did
And
agree.
I think the most important thing is to begin to understand that we can slip realities. And we understand that now, even everybody understands it in some way or another. Whereas 50 years ago, we thought there was only one reality.
Yeah.
So we've already moved. So the door is sliding open and we can slip through it. And once we slip through it, it'll open a little more. And those ones who made a contract with us, they're waiting.
Great stuff. Love it. To all the people out there who are listening to Ani right now, please put your questions into the chat, because we will put the questions to Ani in a few minutes. I am kind of spellbound and I couldn't type questions, but please make an effort and put your questions into the chat. So somebody is noting them down and we will ask Ani whatever we want to ask. We were also talking a bit, and it's in the title of your talk, about fogous and quoits. And that's a different, it's not different, but it's an extended connection, isn't it? Because there is the earth and the star connection. Do you want to talk about that a bit? And if there is a way of working with that, or how you connect to it? I know how you connect to that.
So fogous, so we take fogous. Fogous
Let's
are
take fogous, yeah.
pretend we were a rabbit or a badger.
Oh, yay.
So they sort of, the archaeologists came along and said, oh, it's probably a grain store. And then they went particularly to Lamorna, to a place called Rosemary, to believe Fugu. And they did, Time Team went along and brought, Time Team are wonderful because they can bring everybody, all together. They've got the money to bring everybody and do a great excavation and exploration with a lot of different specialists. And they discovered that there was a enclosure, and in the center of that enclosure was this underground chamber with huge, it had been quite a job to make. It had huge granite beams holding up the roof, and only two houses in that enclosure at the side. So that made them think this great underground place cannot have been a grain store for two little houses. That would be impractical and ridiculous. So then they thought, well, maybe after all, the people who go in there and feel differently are right. So you could say, I mean, in one of the traditions I did, one of the learning ceremonies you had to do is dig your grave and lie in it all night and call your death to yourself. But never mind all of that.
I did that one,
yeah. But if you dig a hole in the ground and lie in it, even if you're not covered up, it is amazingly peaceful, isn't it? Because you're down in the earth and all the stuff that we're generally is going around us disappears. So if you have an underground chamber, you go down into the earth and all that movement and all the stuff that we're taking in, all the information that's flying past us in all sorts of ways goes, because the earth is strong enough to hold it out. So one of the things you get is incredible peace, but there's also something about going, if you want to talk, if you want to listen to the earth, go into her. That's why they really, some people really honor moles. And they say, if you do a ceremony and you want earth, take a molehill, because the mole, it lives within the earth. The mole is blind. He's just listening to her vibrations. And he's so sensitive to all the movements within her. That's how he finds his worms. Whatever else he does, I don't know a great deal about moles. I haven't studied them. But so it's quite, you could say, so as it happens at Lamorna, there is a fugu. And I've quite often I've been in there a lot myself, and I've sent people in there, and it's amazing. They go in for maybe half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, a short time. But if they're still, again, it's a place where the earth has been speaking to humans for thousands of years, and something will come for them. It may be joy, it may be peace, it may be a message, it may be whatever, you may be feeling a lot of, and then you come out and you're back in our normal world. And that is only 10 minutes walk from the Merry Maiden Stone Circle. Now I see the stone circles as more open to the sky, open to the heavens, open to the stars. And there's one up on a hill called the Nine Maidens. You have to walk up the hill to it. And then if you look in a particular direction, if you look west, there's a natural headland, and it's quite strange. It's a pile of stones, it's big, and it feels like a runway. You're at the circle, and you could run along this runway up onto that headland and out, then you'd be flying. And the place I felt that was in Wisconsin in America, where they have these mounds, which they have built, animal mounds and bird mounds, and there's this very strange graveyard where they've buried a lot of people who were killed in the Vietnam War, and on every grave there's a little American flag. So there are all these hundreds of American flags fluttering, and in the middle of them there are two big mounds, a bit larger than life, of big cats. Who knows if they were jaguars or mountain lions? We don't know. And these big cats have long tails stretching out behind them. And when I was on them, one of them, it felt the same, that it was a runway that you could run along
to the
and
stars.
take off into the stars.
To the stars, yeah.
So, you know, I think we have to trust.
Comes to us because we don't.
Comes to us because also, even if you look at old stories, they've been Christianized. And if you look at the findings of archaeologists or whoever they are, very often, and you go back to the 16th century, which is quite a way back, but still they're Christianized. Their view is not clear.
Yeah.
So in a way, you have to empty yourself out and trust, and then not get overexcited and go back again and see what they say the next time and see if it follows up. And maybe that's what I get from it. You go there and you get something else, or something else is given to you. I don't even like get really. If you're fortunate, something else is shown to you, because each of us has and if we talk about activism,
it's a
second,
that little bit, yeah.
It's like
it's a web.
We're trying to do the best, and what can we do? And it's such a crisis, and you know, perhaps I should do this. No, it'd be better if I did. No, they're doing that. Me, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and it's
like
exactly what you're saying. Go to those places where they talk to us for strength, because we think we're protecting the earth, but actually we need strength from the earth to continue.
Yeah.
Also for inspiration, but maybe the inspiration doesn't come as a fully formed idea, but maybe a little vague something rather comes. And if we go away and let that expand and notice, a whole path will open up for us that we didn't even
But
imagine.
we couldn't think of it, could we? We couldn't
No,
imagine it before because the past starts to open once you, yep, getting you fully.
exactly so, exactly so. So they're really important at this time
Yeah,
to inspire us
yeah,
and to strengthen us and to keep us steady and maybe to give us hope when we think it's all impossible and we're lost in the human world. And
yeah.
we think, look, we're so powerful, we can't possibly change ourselves. But that's a load of rubbish, really. The
Is that
people,
good? Is that a good point on the rubbish point to slowly calm down and go to questions?
you
Please
know,
remember, Annie said it's all a load of rubbish.
well, it's another reality. It's only a reality,
Yeah,
and this whole, we have magicians running our world at the moment, and they're quite powerful, and they're good at holding their dream over us all.
mhm,
But if we go and step outside that and allow the earth dream to come into us a little, if enough of us do that, there will be another dream that will get stronger. And their dream is cracking at the moment, so it's a good time to do it. It's
yeah,
falling apart in every direction. But this war in
yeah.
Palestine,
Palestine.
what do? We send bombs, cluster bombs, or drones, whatever we send. Why don't we send grief tenders? Because that's what they all need. That's what the Israelis need, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Because if the grief isn't tended, it turns into hatred,
Goes into hatred. Yeah,
revenge.
yeah. And
And
and and the abused person becomes an abuser.
yes, and how can they not?
Yeah, yeah,
Because they're so hurt
yeah.
that they've had to close down to such a degree that they can't feel anyone else's pain anymore, only their own. Anyway,
Absolutely. They
we
feel the
haven't, we
pain.
haven't had,
And the fear, of course, no, it produced a lot of fear. So never again to ask. So you're reacting from fear, and yeah,
so
yeah.
now we come to our ancestors. I think we can slip from this to our ancestors and the cromlechs and quoits.
Oh yeah.
Now what's
Okay.
left of them are three big, I mean, they are different sizes. The Lanyon one is taller than taller than me anyway.
Mm,
Um, and then Chumwon is smaller. And some of them been put back together, but I think they were burial places. So they were places to contact the ancestors. And the Chun one, I think they've discovered by some their photography that they do that I don't understand. There were field systems around them. So their ancestors were not buried on a hill away from everything. They were actually buried in the middle of
in the middle
their
of
fields to bless
yeah.
their endeavors and their hopes to keep alive. So again, it's difficult with our ancestors, isn't it, in this land? Because our immediate ancestors, I'm not sure how clever I thought they were, but then of course when they've died, they will have slipped into another realities. They may see the foolishness of their ways
Of their ways. Yeah.
and maybe remind us how to not make the mistake they made.
Mm,
It's that thing of, again, honoring your ancestors and your lines that take you way back
yeah.
to the ancestors who were the trees and the rocks,
Yeah.
and then the old grandmother, the ocean herself.
Wish it yourself. Yeah.
So you honor the ancestors at the quoits. You go down into the earth in the fugu.
Oh, good.
You open up to the all and the everything and the rocks. Actually, the whole universe is within the rocks. I'm sure it's within us too. It is within us too, but I've only seen it, really seen it, in a stone circle in one of the rocks. So that's a suggestion, a mini suggestion about how to begin and be simple. I went to, I'm going to say, I know I'm rattling on. We probably want to move on. I went to Avebury once. I think it was something like, it was one of the festivals. Maybe it was, shall we say it's midsummer? I know it was hot and sunny. There were a lot of people there, and it was a bit like a psychic fair. So
Mm,
someone was doing a gong, and someone else was doing something else, and someone else was singing to the stones, and some people over there were dancing. And it was like, did it matter that the stones were there? Not really. There was too much going on, and it was too complicated.
mm,
Would have been better if everybody had gathered and maybe just sat with the rocks and all the strength of all our meditation, our different ways, and just tried to listen and feel what the rocks might be prepared to say when so many people had come. Whereas as it was a sort of cacophony of human endeavor. So that's why I always say be simple.
Thank you so much. I'm getting you fully, and I guess most people here. Is there any, Marie-Louise, any question we really need to ask before we stop? Because we only have a few more minutes. We would quite like, oh, Marie-Louise coming in, we would quite like to give to people a chance to ask a question. Unmute yourself, Marie-Louise.
And there was someone who said she had grown up by the White Horse of Uffington and she found it difficult to connect down in Cornwall where she is now.
Yeah.
Well, I went the other way. I don't know how long you've been in Cornwall, but I went the other way and I found it really hard to connect with the land up here. And it took me a few years. Yes.
That was rhubarb.
How long have you been down there now? How many years?
I've been in Cornwall for 12 years, but I haven't really. I went to Castle Dyness recently. I did have a bit of an electric shock sort of feeling. And I think it's because it's a hill fort, like White Horse Hill has a hill fort.
Yes.
But I do live around, I'm surrounded by granite and I haven't quite figured out. It just feels like, I can't work out how to connect to it. And it probably is just practice that I need.
I wouldn't work out. I would keep going. You know, I kept going out onto the land here, and one day, for no reason, I wasn't praying or anything. It just opened up to me, and I discovered how beautiful and rich and sensual and feminine and gorgeous it is. Whereas Cornwall is quite different. It's quite harsh and strong and held. But all I can say is, I wouldn't go to a fort. Go to some of the stone circles and go again and again and again. And one of them you'll like, and keep going back there. Sit there, lie there. Always take a little offering and beg. You know, the Lakota say, go out and beg when you go on vision quest. Don't expect anything. Cry and beseech, don't demand. Please open yourself up to me. I'm dying here. Without you, without your communication, I'm dying here without you speaking to me. Please, please help me feel at home with you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Annie. Is there any other questions, Marie-Louise, which you found? Because you found rhubarbs. Is there another one which we should?
Yeah, we have a few questions. Tim
We
Sallis.
only have 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
Annie,
Tim Sallis was
very. I'll try and be quick.
Yeah. Tim Sallis was asking, what are your thoughts on cup and ring marks?
Sorry, what?
Cup and ring marks. I think the marks on the stones, you know, cups.
Yeah, give me a
ring
different
marks.
question. That's not a 1 minute answer. Give me another question.
Okay.
Was another one that I almost answered.
Speaking such wise in a sense, but how best to share it far enough now, so urgently needed across the globe. That's Jewel Charik. So
what's the question? There's one here.
How do we spread the message far and wide across the globe in these urgent times?
In the Native American tradition, the number 50, in the one way that I learned, which a lot of people will say is not right or don't know, number 15 is a collective consciousness. In the collective consciousness, it's the consciousness that we can all reach. It's full of everything we knew and everything we will know. And the more we hold a different dream, it will go into the collective. I've watched over my lifetime different things that were not normal become normal because they got into the collective. So all you have to do is be a dreamer. And they used to say, it's probably more now, what's it, 144,000, which is nothing in this day and age. Dreamers is all we need to change the dream. There was somebody else. Is it just, no.
Have you got another one, Marie-Louise?
Yeah, only my own, maybe. that the stone circles look like stone people dancing. What do you think about that?
Yes, well, we do go and dance. And they say that, you know, that the story is that there were girls who were dancing on the Sabbath, bad, and turned into rock. Well, actually, they have the stones have a different meaning, but dancing is very important. But again, dancing has a discipline, because if a group of you dance with rhythm, something will happen. I've seen dancers in a pueblo in America, and it looked like, you know, the grass and the wind blows it.
Yeah.
They were all so together. They were moving energy like that. And I've seen dancers dance a buffalo or a deer, and you can see that animal. So if you're going to dance, again, really work to make something really powerful. It's not just a question of going in and, oh yes, they're probably calling you to dance. You'll have to get a group. Then you'll have to get a musician or two. And then you'll have to go every month for years, and they'll have you.
Okay. On that note, I am the mean timekeeper, and we do need to stop. Now, there is another question which just came up. The fugu, the underground chamber, can you, Marie-Louise, can you put the name into the chat? How was it called, Annie?
Boleigh, Boleigh, but it's at Rosemary
It's the rosemary, yeah.
in the garden, and you have to ring the people up. And if you put it rosemary wood
Yeah.
into the computer, they have a phone number. You have to ring them up, make an appointment. You can't just say, don't, they're happy for you to go, but they don't want you, it's right by the house.
Yeah. Rosemary wood. Okay.
Can
That's
you
great.
say it again? I just
Rose, Rose, M for mother, ERRYN for nobody. And it's at Lamorna. But if they put rosemary wood into the computer, it will come up because they do Airbnb.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. And then by Lamorna, that's the village.
The
In
little,
Cornwall, you'll find it.
yeah.
Okay, I think we really need to stop. Otherwise, the next speaker, who is Chai, will be waiting, and everybody will be late. Annie, well, big hug.
Big hug to you.
Big hug to everybody from Annie, and thank you ever so much for being with us again and sharing with us what you know.
Thank you for inviting me, you know, it was so sweet.
It is.
And I've listened to everybody else. It's very kind.
Yeah.
And everybody, go out to your rocks. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Wherever you are, if they're limestone or chalk or flint, go out to your rocks. Goodbye.
Bye, Annie.